What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with a non-spoiler review for Boy Kills World. And usually when a movie's out there in the theater, I don't really care that much about spoilers. However, if you're on the fence about whether or not to go this weekend, there is a whopper of a spoiler like in the last third, so I don't want to ruin that for anybody. But I've been eagerly looking forward to seeing the movie ever since I first saw the Red Band trailer. But I must admit, I was kind of disappointed by the overall experience. But let's start with some of the positives. It's a deranged, bloody revenge saga about this killing machine who is both deaf and mute, seeking to take down this corrupt dynasty that rules over the city with an iron fist. And he's got some bad history with this dynasty. But Bill Skarsgård provides the punches, the kicks, the knees, the elbows, while H. John Benjamin provides his kind of signature voice for the internal monologues throughout the movie. And if you don't recognize the name of H. John Benjamin, I'll just say Dr. Katz and Archer. If you've watched either of those animated series, you are very familiar with the voice of H. John Benjamin. Let's just say he's got a unique delivery style that can kind of make or break a show or a movie, depending upon if you find him to be funny. And even though I regard myself as being firmly in the camp that regards both Dr. Katz as well as Archer as being two of the funniest animated shows in animation history, that said, he does need good screenplays. He does need good jokes written on his behalf. And I think what's going to be the big make or break ingredient for a lot of people when they see this movie is whether or not you find his ongoing commentary throughout the movie to be hilarious, or if you can hear the sounds of crickets chirping in your theater, as I experienced this evening. There was only there's one recurring bit about halfway through the movie that lasts for a couple minutes, which I found to be hilarious, but otherwise I was like, this whole movie is just like, it's just hurling jokes at me one after another, and I'm not laughing at any of them, which is always a very depressing, kind of sad, debilitating experience. But I think on the whole, Boy Kills World is either a pretty good action movie with a lot of terrible scenes, or it's a straight up bad movie with some really good action scenes. Basically, it's a mess, but given a choice, I will always take an inconsistent mess where filmmakers took a big, bold swing, took a lot of risks, and failed over your typical cautious, risk-averse, big, expensive, bland franchise movie like we typically see coming out of Hollywood. Plus, this movie gives us generous quantities of hardcore R-rated violence from pretty much start to finish, so how bad can it be? I mean, I guess if we're going to be honest, at times it was kind of terrible. This relentlessly silly tone that pervades the film for like the first hour or first hour and a half, it just didn't work for me at all. And when the movie decides to take a more serious turn toward the latter part of the movie, it feels totally out of place and basically too little, too late. But as I've said repeatedly, there are some good action scenes, so let's get into it. But let's start with who made this thing. Here are all the vital stats ripped straight from Wikipedia. Boy Kills World is a 2023 action comedy thriller film directed by Moritz Moore in his feature directorial debut from a screenplay by Tyler Burton Smith and Aaron Remmers, and a story by Remmers and Moore. The film stars Bill Skarsgård, Jessica Roth, Michelle Dockery, Famke Janssen, Charles Chartlow Copley, Brett Gelman, Isaiah Mustafa, he's hilarious, and Andrew Koji. This plot revolves around a campaign of vengeance enacted by a martial arts expert's rendered deaf-mute by an attack that killed his entire family, whose thoughts are presented as an inner voice derived from a childhood video game provided by H. John Benjamin. Boy Kills World premiered at the 2023 Toronto International Film Festival, and it is now playing in theaters around the country. So let's get back to some of the good ingredients. Bill Skarsgård. He's totally invested. He's totally committed to the role. He's shredded as hell, and this is an interesting experiment where he has to perform his entire part mute and basically not really able to respond to what people are saying. He can read lips, but oftentimes he doesn't quite read lips accurately. He has a lot of hallucinations, and he never quite knows if what he's seeing or hearing is actually really there. But the funniest part of the movie by far is when they're planning this giant heist or this giant mission, and one of the most hardcore guys on the team just keeps telling him all this hardcore shit, and he just keeps kind of nodding and pretending like he understands, but it almost is like that YouTube channel Bad Lip Reading where nothing quite makes sense. That stuff was hilarious, but sadly those scenes were in very small portions. But it's funny when you look at Bill Skarsgård and his brother Alexander. I mean, both of them look like they've been living off the keto diet for the last 10 years. And then you look at their dad, Stellan Skarsgård, who's an absolute acting legend. And he looks like he's eating whatever the fuck he wants. I know that I saw an interview once with Stellan Skarsgård, and he says my two favorite things are cooking and fucking. I was like, oh, Jesus, all right. Do your thing, you do you. But his sons obviously are they're determined to be full-blown fucking movie stars, and I'm a big fan of the whole Skarsgård clan. And while it's tough to say for sure, I bet that Bill Skarsgård went through some extensive Muay Thai training for this movie because he's got those great long limbs. And when you had that kind of long-limbed build, you are a natural for what is oftentimes referred to as the science of 8 limbs. In Muay Thai, it's hands, feet, knees, and elbows, but he's got those great arms for just like jacking the fuck out of people with his elbows. So he looks great. And when in terms of his intensity, he's got that gaunt expression and those hollow eyes. I mean, he looks the part, he acts the part. He was pitch perfect casting for this role. I think just if there are any flaws or like, if there's an Achilles heel to this movie, it's the screenplay. But I think the movie starts off well enough because we get this extensive training sequence in the jungle with a character who goes by the name of Shaman. And Shaman is played by the legendary Yayan Ruhian from the Raid 1, the Raid 2, as well as John Wick Chapter 3. And any scene where he appears, he completely steals the show. I mean, the guy, he knows what the fuck he's doing when it comes to martial arts. He is terrifying to behold. And so we get this long training sequence with the central character, or Boy. Boy as a boy, followed by Boy as a young man. And we get to see just like all these crazy parkour sequences, like going through the jungle and swinging off vines and climbing palm trees and all that stuff. But also some really brutal training sequences, like, pushing rocks up hills, like old school Greek mythology stuff. But I am a sucker for a training sequence. Pretty much every 80s action movie or every 80s sports movie had great training sequences, so it's in my DNA. So they were rubbing my sweet spot when they gave me a great training sequence right off the bat. And there are some other cool characters in there. The character played by Jessica Roth, her character's name is June 27. And while they didn't necessarily create this incredibly nuanced character, she has a great look, which more often than not in an action movie, it's kind of all you need. She looks cool as shit in her outfit, and she has this helmet where across the visor, it's constantly making these weird digital expressions or little phrases. So she communicates through her helmet, and it just makes her very mysterious and very interesting in a lot of ways. And I think my favorite fight scene of the movie is one where she's featured prominently, where you have this kind of creepy harpsichord music playing in the background. Like in a martial arts movie, like in the absence of a good movie at its core, it can still be a good martial arts movie if you have great fight scenes with great music and great set pieces and great choreography. I say this movie gives us flashes of brilliance, but there are also some fight scenes where they're so overly busy and so over the top that you kind of lose your emotional investment in it because you start to feel like they're relying upon movie tricks as opposed to great martial arts. And for me, I always defer to great martial arts over great special effects in an action movie. And the last positive is, I think I'll be watching movies by Moritz more moving forward. While this movie was not a complete success for me, I mean, opinions may vary, your mileage may vary. I mean, anytime you have a hyper-stylized, over-the-top, very silly action movie, it's going to rub some people the wrong way, and other people are going to say, oh my God, I've been waiting my whole life for this kind of strange, silly, violent tone. For me, it was a very mixed experience, but there was enough cool shit there and enough risk-taking and enough violence and at least enough attempts at humor and at least enough attempts at a kind of a signature flashy visual style where Moritz Moore has got my attention. So whatever he does next, I will give it a shot. And also, I'm just seeing here on IMDb, apparently the movie is based on a short film of the same name by Moritz Moore and Arend Remmers. I have not seen that short film, but let's just dive into my biggest complaint with the movie, the screenplay. It's not funny at all. And even if you have wildly talented actors where we're accustomed to hear them say really funny shit, this movie just delivered one thud after another. And as I sat down, I was all excited and I was expecting humor and violence. And over the course of the first 20, 30 minutes, my big happy expression just kind of went to bewilderment to concern. I was like, wait a second, none of the comedy is working at all. And obviously comedy is an incredibly subjective thing. We've all been in situations where somebody tells a joke, half the people at the table fall out of the chairs and the other half's like, what? Anyway, so humor, let's just say it's a very personal thing. I did not find this movie funny at all, except for the bad lip reading scene. And the bad lip reading scene was genuinely hilarious. So I know they're capable of great comedy, but who knows? Maybe I'm just a sourpuss. Maybe I wasn't in the mood to laugh. That's what comedians always say when they bomb. They say the crowd didn't want to laugh. Bullshit. Every single crowd that goes to a comedy club wants to laugh. They're paying for the experience of laughing. You're just not providing it for them. So anyway, I guess we'll share the blame. Maybe I was in a bad mood, or maybe the screenplay just isn't funny at all. But my next complaint, it wounds me to have to even say this because I've been a fan of her since I saw her in Goldeneye back in 1995 or whenever the hell that movie came out. But Xenia Onatopp herself, Famke Janssen, she is horrendous in this movie. It's almost like somebody gave her some medication before a scene, said, deliver your lines without any acting or emotion or craft or skill of any kind. And yeah, she was easily, I mean, apart from the screenplay, like one of the big gaping flaws in the overall kind of ensemble cast, if you will. And in that she is the big bad villain at the core of the movie. Like this whole revenge saga is all about taking her and her corrupt family down. If you don't have a really cool matriarch running this corrupt dynasty, well then the whole movie starts to fall to pieces. What you really needed was somebody who could really just lean. You basically needed an actress that could lean into it with the same vitality and kind of sadistic energy that she did with Xenia Onatopp nearly 30 fucking years ago. But yeah, sadly, she was a big flaw in the movie. But another complaint I had was with the action, where sometimes the action was so determined to be so hyper stylized, so over the top, so overly elaborate, so overly busy. It feels like either like a snake eating its own tail, or it's kind of constantly tripping over itself, or it just feels needlessly complex to the point where it kind of keeps you at a distance. Like at one point, Bill Skarsgård's character gets this gauntlet that has a handgun on the side so that he can hit people. When he hits people, the handgun goes off. I'm like, all right, that's fine, but you're shooting them. Do you really need to hit them in the face? Like just hitting them in the face as you shoot them make them more dead? Because early on in the movie, we see him training with every form of firearm imaginable, so we know he's good with sniper rifles, machine guns, pistols, like you name it. He can do it all. Knives, like if there is a weapon on this planet, he is well trained with it. So it just gets stupid when you take things to such a stylistic extreme, unless it's like, some classic Hong Kong action flick like, Master of the Flying Guillotine or something like that. It just feels like maybe they're trying way too hard and kind of overthinking things instead of just letting the fights kind of flow naturally. And obviously, I am talking out my ass, bullshitting a mile a minute. I mean, this is all completely subjective on my part, but just, yeah, too many of the action scenes were neither thrilling nor exciting. At one point, I even felt myself kind of repressing a yawn and my eyes kind of getting tired out. Luckily, I had a double shot of espresso in my pocket. I chugged that just to kind of rise to the occasion. But when you're watching a movie where people are taking like Gatling guns and like shooting each other in the face and like, blood and brains are splattering all over the place, I should not be like I should not be feeling bored. I should be feeling exhilarated and stimulated, and I should be like, oh my God, like, oh shit. Like it should be 2 hours straight of oh shit moments. And there were really only like one or two. But to be fair, the final fight scene, and I won't say who's involved in the fight scene, there were some oh shit moments where I was like, oh my God, that was so gruesome and so gross. But as I mentioned earlier, the movie takes a very serious turn toward the end, and I was like, oh God, like, do y'all even know what story you're telling or what movie you're trying to make? Because it feels a little just disjointed. Like, if you're making a movie that's this over stylized, obviously there's going to be some uneven scenes, but I feel like every movie needs to be the best version of itself that it can possibly be. And it just seems like stylistically and tonally, the movie evolves in a way where I found myself frustrated as opposed to getting more emotionally invested. But speaking of oh shit moments, what it reminds me of was the post-fight press conference after the recent event, UFC 300, where Dana White said, I'm in the business of delivering oh shit moments. And for people who don't follow mixed martial arts, UFC 300 was insane. It was a great fight card in terms of the talent that had been booked to fight on the card, and then it delivered above and beyond expectations, where a lot of people who were, skeptical of the event ahead of time came away from it just like, oh, mostly due to Max Holloway. Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje saved that event and made it basically an all-time classic. But that whole event was filled with so many oh shit moments where I feel like action movies are not competing with other movies. Action movies need to remember they're also competing with combat sports, boxing, MMA, kickboxing, even professional wrestling. There's a wide variety of violence and entertainment out there. And I feel like it behooves a filmmaker to remember your competition is not just the latest shitty action movie that disappointed. It's also like the next kick-ass action video game. Like Stellar Blade is dropping tonight at midnight. And the action looks fucking insane. And in an hour and a half, I will be playing that game for basically the next 24 hours straight. And my advice to any filmmaker who's setting out to make the next big action movie, it would be make sure that it's more entertaining, more exciting, more visceral than the best UFC fight card, than the best goddamn video game. You're competing with everything, so make this movie really count, make it really matter. In any case, I hope you found my observations and reactions useful when it comes to deciding for yourself whether or not you want to buy a ticket or watch it online or not at all. Or if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. I'll be back later on this weekend with a box office breakdown as well as a review of Stellar Blade once I've had a chance to invest, somewhere between like 10 or 20 hours into the game itself. But I can't thank you enough for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. Hope everybody has an amazing weekend, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.